First you go down and then you go up to make it better, make it better. Down on the ground, there's just one way up. Make it better, make it better. If you stand by me, I will stand by you. To make it better, make it better.
Hello and welcome to Rise Up with Rebecca Seawright. I'm your host, Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright, serving the Upper East Side, Yorkville, and Roosevelt Island. Thank you to our viewers for tuning in today. We have a very special show lined up for you. I'm pleased to be joined today by my spouse, Jay Hershenson, who is the chair of the board of the Louis Armstrong House Museum and a senior vice president at Queens College. The museum is affiliated with the college and promotes the legacy of Louis Armstrong, America's first Black music icon. Also, we're joined by Riccardi, the chief archivist and Grammy Award winner of the Louis Armstrong Museum. And I want to thank both of you for joining us on the show today. And we'll lead off with the chair of the board, Jay Hershenson. Thank you, Jay, for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Assemblymember Seawright. It is an honor to be here. I know that many of your viewers and listeners are fans of Louis Armstrong, and especially those who grew up in New York City and know the story about how he always returned to his original home. But since New York City is an international icon in itself, there are folks from around the world who are very much aware of the legacy and heritage of Louis Armstrong. I just want to make the comment that I'm a city kid who was born in the Bronx and grew up in Queens. I lived on 91st Street off of Northern Boulevard, which is not very far from the Louis Armstrong House Museum, which is located at 34-56 107th Street in Corona, Queens. I grew up playing handball in Corona at PS 127, not very far from the place that Louis Armstrong returned to wherever he was, anywhere in the world. And because of the fact that I had some familiarity with the neighborhood over the years, when I became a vice chancellor for CUNY, I took a great interest in working with Queens College, which is very much involved with the Louis Armstrong House Museum. And I just want to say very quickly that, and you'll hear more about this in a moment, that the real force behind the scenes as to why we have a Louis Armstrong House Museum really began with his wife, Lucille, because when Louis Armstrong passed in 1971, she provided the opportunity for the home and the archives to become a museum honoring her husband. And after she died in 1983, she willed the home and its contents to the city of New York, which designated the City University of New York Queens College to shepherd the process. And it was a perfect match. Queens College has the Aaron Copland School of Music, and many, many aspects of Queens College interact constantly with the Louis Armstrong House, which is, of course, now a museum. And I'm very proud to serve on the board. It's a 12-member board and has wonderful, dedicated people. And they work with a fabulous team with the director, Regina Bain, who is a real superstar, and advisory board, and many, many members of the Corona community who are engaged with the museum. We are incredibly fortunate because at the Louis Armstrong House Museum, which is now open to tours once again following the pandemic, we are incredibly fortunate because we have, and I'm not looking to embarrass him, but it is what it is, as they say. He is the world's greatest expert on the life of Louis Armstrong, the reach of Louis Armstrong, the outreach of Louis Armstrong in just so many ways. He is the director of research collections for the Louis Armstrong House Museum and the author of What a Wonderful World, which of course I was playing right before you began the taping, The Magic of Louis Armstrong's Later Years, and Heart Full of Rhythm, we're especially proud of him because in addition to all the lectures and the opportunities he's had to teach, not only about the life of Louis Armstrong, but about many musicians. He, of course, is a great musician himself. But very recently, he won a Grammy Award this past spring, and it was for the Best Album Notes for the complete Louis Armstrong Columbia and RCA studio sessions from 1946 to
Wow.
1968. So he is a Grammy Award winner that we're just incredibly proud of. And when anyone comes to visit the Louis Armstrong House Museum, and we get lots and lots of overtures from movie companies and television stations and wonderful legislators like you, invariably, I turn the floor over to our incredible director of research collections for the Louis Armstrong House Museum, Riccardi.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay, and thank you, Ricky. And you have a great background, Ricky. You'll have to tell us at some point about all the things, Louis, that are around you in the picture.
Yeah, I'm sitting in the Louis Armstrong archives right now. I'm on the campus of Queens College, and this has been the home of the archive since the summer of 1991. The archives opened in May of 94. And this is the world's largest archives for any single jazz musician. So we have Louis Armstrong's collection, everything that was found in the house at the time of his passing. But we've managed to acquire 12 other research collections solely devoted to Armstrong. So it grows and grows and grows all the time. And about 5 years ago, we received a $2.7 million grant from Robert F. Smith's Fund 2 Foundation, which allowed us to digitize the entire archive. So everything is completely digitized, available to researchers around the world. And you know, we were dark for most of the pandemic, but the museum is open again 3 days a week. I am still personally mostly working from home, but I still come in every now and then trying to keep up with new acquisitions because stuff keeps on coming in. People keep on donating letters and photographs. So if anybody watching out there has a personal Louis Armstrong memento, our archives, we're always taking new acquisitions. And for me, who's been into Armstrong since the age of 15. It's a dream job, and there's not a day that goes by where I take it for granted. Yeah, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
That's terrific. That's terrific, Ricky. And tell us about the famous Lucille turquoise kitchen in the house that you can see. It's a beautiful kitchen. And Lucille was such a great feminist. Recently, I had the pleasure to watch the documentary on Louis Armstrong, and he originally didn't want a house. And Lucille was working and saved her money, and she went out and bought the house, and he grew to absolutely love it. And one of the things that she said in the documentary was, now that I've saved and bought the house, you can take over the mortgage payments. And he did. So it was a great story. But tell us about that famous kitchen in the house that you can actually go in and tour at the museum in the house and see that famous Lucille kitchen that she put in.
Yeah, the kitchen's almost indescribable. You have to come to Queens and see it, but I'll do my best. It's almost a Jetsons, Space Age, New York World's Fair, all that stuff was going on in the 1960s. So to me, it has a look of the kitchen of the future, and it's this really kind of popping blue turquoise color that's everywhere. The clock, the Sub-Zero refrigerator, the dishwasher, it's all the same striking shade of blue. The cabinets, they're all wood, but they're lacquered, so that it's shining and beautiful, and there's piano hinges and there's curvatures. It's I get excited just talking about it. We get people who visit the museum who aren't even really jazz fans. They just want to see this kind of perfectly preserved jet age home, see what it was like in the 60s. And that house really needs to, be seen to be believed, especially that kitchen. There's actually a 6-burner stove with a double oven and a little placard that reads "Custom made by Crown for Mr. and Mrs. Louis Armstrong." And so you really know you're in somewhere special. It's the kind of place where you can drive by it, and if you don't know it's a museum, you might think it's a very nice home, but it's, kind of your typical Archie Bunker home right here in the middle of Queens. But then when you go inside of it and you see this turquoise kitchen, kitchen. You see the mirrored bathroom. You see the electric stair chair. You see all these state-of-the-art conveniences and appliances from the late 60s. That's when you realize that Louis and Lucille, they knew how to live. That's for sure. And as you mentioned, Lucille, she was a Cotton Club dancer. That's where Louis met her. She was in show business, and she is actually the fourth Mrs. Armstrong, which is a subject for a whole another show we can do in the future. But Lucille and Louis met in 1939. Louis always said that she was a distinguished pioneer because she was the first dark-skinned African-American dancer to get hired by the Cotton Club. The Cotton Club used to just hire light-skinned dancers. And by this point, Louis is more famous than you can imagine. He's making movies for Warner Brothers. He's appearing on the radio. He's recording for Decca. He's breaking records and concert appearances. But he's living out of a suitcase. He has an apartment in Harlem. He's on the road 300 days a year. And after him and Lucille married in October 1942, 80 years ago, their honeymoon was 6 straight months of one-nighters, living out of a bus, living out of a suitcase. And Lucille, who had been raised in Corona, Queens, that's when she said, this is not what I signed up for. And so, as you said, she put her own money, put the down payment, and once Louis saw it, he could have lived anywhere, but he chose that neighborhood, and he refused to leave until the day he died.
And no matter how famous he got and all of his worldly travels, he always came back home to Queens, to this very special house. And so I encourage all of our viewers to go out and tour the museum. And I also hear that there's a $23 million center that's been constructed across the street that's scheduled to open soon. And tell us a little bit about the center across the street.
Let me kick it off, because this is a wonderful, wonderful development in the future of the Louis Armstrong House Museum. Several years ago, again when I was vice chancellor for the CUNY system, the president of Queens College came to me and said that he wanted to find a way to create some type of education center, some type of exhibition center across the street from the Louis Armstrong House Museum. And with the help of the New York State Assembly, and thank you, Assemblymember Seawright, and in particular, Jeff Aubrey, who was absolutely wonderful, and on the Senate side, John Sabini and Surf Maltese, and of course, the governor's office at the time, we were able to first get about 10 million from the state allocated to create this education center. And then with the help of the city of New York, and in particular, the Office of Cultural Affairs was wonderful. The city of New York provided a little over 10 million. We were able to get some federal money and some borough president allocation. And now we are at the point where right across the street, there is a brand new, as you indicated, $23 million new campus for the Louis Armstrong House Museum. And that's so important because it'll provide the next generation of Louis Armstrongs and opportunities for concerts. Of course, there are concerts now that take place in the beautiful garden, which is attached to the house. But this will provide more space for exhibitions. And we're very looking forward to this happening in the spring. And it really places the Louis Armstrong House Museum in the position of not only welcoming people to the original house, but all kinds of programs for young artists, in particular Black artists and artists that reflect the demographics of the wonderful neighborhood that we are in, which is in Corona, Queens, which is benefiting so much from many of the residents of all colors, that are comprised of the community there. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Ricky, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, the center is going to be the new home of the archives as well. We will always be part of the Queens College family, but in the coming weeks, the actual stacks, which is one room over from where I'm sitting right now, which has over 60,000 pieces in it. It's all going to be packed up by professional fine arts shippers and driven across town. And there will be a state-of-the-art new facility on the second floor, new stacks, new compact shelving. There's going to be extra storage in the basement. And so the archives will be there. And then on the first floor, is going to be an exhibit that was curated by the great pianist and composer Jason Moran. And so Lewis's trumpet and collages and a lot of our most requested items, they're going to be on display. There's going to be an interactive touch table. I mentioned how the archives are digitized, but visitors are going to be able to call up on a screen, concert recordings and interviews and broadcasts and photographs right there in the middle of the exhibit area. There'll be a gift shop there. So the ultimate goal, and a 70-seat performance room, with a Steinway piano and the whole thing. So the ultimate goal is like our little jazz version of Graceland, where a family, a couple, a person by themselves, someone traveling overseas, they can come to Corona, come to 107th Street, and literally make a day of it. Have some food, and then visit the archives, see the exhibit. Maybe if there's a lecture or a film screening or a concert, buy a ticket for that. Walk across the street, see the house, maybe sit in the garden. And so we're very close. This has been a dream. It's been years in the making, and we're right there. It's going to be happening very soon.
That's terrific. And how can people access the digital archives? How do the viewers get access, both digitally and in person, to tour the house? Can they go on a website and sign up? And just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. Our website is lewisarmstronghouse.org. And that's pretty much, everything you need to know is right on that website. There, we have been asking for visitors to the house to book their tours in advance. Pre-pandemic, we just accepted walk-ins all day. People would come in, take a tour. It was very loose. Now, we're trying to keep a limit because it is kind of a small house. And so visit lewisarmstronghouse.org if you want to visit. Book your time tour. You pick, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We're open from 11 to 4. You pick whatever time works. And also on that site, you'll see a tab that says research collection. So if you hit that, you can go to our digital collection site. The digital collection site has everything. I mentioned all 60,000 pieces. You can create an account, which is completely free, and search for anything. Billie Holiday, Africa, whatever comes to mind. If you're researching, if you're a fan, Frank Sinatra, you just search it, pow, you'll get everything we have. It's incredible. It's a game changer. It's also a little daunting. And so during the pandemic, my personal pandemic project is we started a virtual exhibit website. And the link is also on lewisarmstronghouse.org. Or if you want to go directly to it, it's virtualexhibits.lewisarmstronghouse.org. And for that, I took some of our most requested stories and things that we have in the archives. We figured everybody was stuck at home in the pandemic, so we named the website after one of Lewis's songs called "That's My Home." And why did Lewis choose Queens? More about his collages, the backstory of Lucille Armstrong, the story of Lewis in the Civil Rights era. How did he warm up on trumpet? What was in his record collection? And so that's a more curated experience where we use the digitized archives, but now I'm kind of guiding the viewers there, on these stories, showing off audio tapes and this and that. And now, we've done about 130 posts. The site's gotten hundreds of thousands of views. We were featured in the Washington Post. And even though we're open again, I'm going to continue that because I think we've hit a nerve that people love Louis Armstrong. People are still interested in him. And because we have this digitized archives, we can continue to tell stories. So I keep doing posts every week.
Wonderful.
If you can visit,
That's great. Terrific.
If you can visit the home, you should. In addition to having the incredible music available now, again with the help of Robert Smith, who is on our board and really provided the funding. My favorite room is the den. There's a spiritual quality to being in the den where Louis Armstrong's notes can be found and where he was in touch, with some of the incredible artists, so many of them, Count Basie and Barbra Streisand, I could go on and on. But when you're sitting in the den and you're there with the tape recorders and the piano and the record player, and you can envision him sitting at his desk and just his mind, working on, new songs and being in touch with the world's greatest artists. And maybe, Ricky, you could tell us about the spiritual quality of the Louis Armstrong den.
Yeah, I mean the den. Yeah, that's where it was Lewis's room because when he tore the house, everything has Lucille's fingerprints. After a while, she kind of got the itch to maybe move to somewhere a little grander, but Lewis refused. So that's when she would call the interior decorator and knock down a wall, put up wallpaper, and give me a chandelier. So the house is mostly Lucille's. Then you get to the den, and you are square in the middle of Lewis's offstage hobbies. And so you see those reel-to-reel tape decks. We have about 750 reel-to-reel tapes. You see his catalog pages. Armstrong, with a fourth grade education, was a natural-born archivist who cataloged each and every reel. You see the chairs where Dizzy Gillespie sat, and Clark Terry, and the Adderley brothers, and Bobby Hackett, and all the great musicians who lived nearby in Queens. But then when you take a tour, I don't want to spoil anything, but the docent will hit a button on the wall, and you hear his voice coming out of the ceiling. And that's the moment that usually visitors either get the chills or they break down, and it's a real spiritual kind of thing. People just feel like he is alive. It's that house is still alive.
Yes, it sounds like it. And you've recently been visited by Carnegie Hall, the Director of Strategic Planning. What kind of partnerships are coming up with Carnegie Hall and the museum as a result of that meeting?
Well, can I just kick it off, Ricky?
Go, Jay. Yeah.
Because I want to give the Assembly member, credit where credit is due. The Assembly member and I attended a John Williams concert and had dinner afterwards with the artistic strategic planning director of Carnegie Hall, and we talked with him and his team, and of course encouraged what we always look to do in these situations. Encouraged him to visit. We also knew that Robert Smith is the chair of the board of Carnegie Hall, and he's on the board of the Louis Armstrong House Museum, and to develop a collaboration with Carnegie Hall would be a real dream. And I want to credit the director of the Louis Armstrong House Museum, Regina Bain, and her team, Ricky, and the other members of the team. They really followed up with Carnegie Hall staff, and there was a recent visit by the team. And I'll leave the rest to Ricky, because this is another dream come true.
Yeah, I wish I had something concrete to announce to the world, but this was a great first step. We came ready with a list of potential programs and educational initiatives and things we can do, and I think they were very impressed by that. So we're going to keep the conversations going, but we think it's the first step in what should be a very fruitful relationship.
Terrific. Great. That's very special. And what's your favorite Louis Armstrong song, Ricky?
Oh, I mean, it's a funny thing. You could ask me my top 10 and I couldn't do it. It would take me a year. But my number one is Stardust. It's a 1931 recording. And to me, that captures all sides of him. The trumpeter, the vocalist, the heart. It's all there in 3 minutes.
Great. Can you sing a little?
No,
Louis
you don't want to hear
Armstrong?
that. You don't
I know
want to hear
Jay
that.
does a great impersonation. Jay, share us your impersonation of Louis Armstrong.
Oh, yeah.
Great, terrific. And Ricky, just repeat for our viewers your website, your contact information. We encourage you all to go online and check out the website of Louis Armstrong Museum and this new $23 million facility, which will be opening up next year. So if you could just repeat for our viewers the website, the phone number,
Sure.
and how to be in touch with the museum. Yeah. And with the holidays coming up, what do you suggest people buy from the gift shop? I love going to the gift shops of all the museums and getting my holiday gifts. So what's one of the favorite things in the gift shop at the museum?
Well, we still sell Lewis's music on physical, media. So you can get a Louis Armstrong LP, get a Louis Armstrong CD. There's actually a brand new holiday compilation coming out soon that we helped put together. I wrote the notes for that. That's going to be an LP coming out soon. Yes, we have the Dot Time series, which Jay is holding up right now. 4 CDs and 2 LPs that came specifically previously unissued recordings from Lewis's private stash here at the archives. But we also have Christmas ornaments. We have postcards. We have T-shirts, hats, all that stuff. And so the gift shop is really jumping. And the set, personally, that I won the Grammy for, it's a mail order only set, but we sell it at the house. You can walk into the gift shop and it's a real kind of collector's item. So the gift shop is great, but if you want to plan that visit, again, the website is lewisarmstronghouse.org. Once you're there, you can book a tour, you can explore the archives, you can sign up for our newsletter. We've been sending out e-blasts every week, and follow us on social media.
Great, terrific. And Jay, tell us about the button you're wearing on your suit lapel.
This is a button.
85.
Yes, thank you. This is a button that celebrates the 85th anniversary of Queens College. And Queens College started in 1937 and has served the people of Queens and the people of the borough and the people of the city, and stayed for 85 years. That's when the first day of classes took place. And we recently had a wonderful celebration and also produced a new video, which of course includes the Louis Armstrong House Museum in a very, very special way. Ricky is actually in the video. And it's really about building futures. That's our theme. It's an important theme for Queens College because we want to serve the next generation of students in the same manner, with the same hopes and aspirations that so many of our students have been a part of all these years. And I'm sure that many of your viewers and listeners benefited from the CUNY system as a whole. It's an amazing story in itself. So yes, thank you for pointing that out. And this is a year of celebration. We are coming out of the pandemic, and I'm sure Ricky joins me in urging all of your viewers and listeners to find their way to cultural institutions within the city of New York. The mayor is a great proponent of visits and opportunities to participate in the programs that are being provided all over the city of New York. But when you go down that path, be sure to include the Louis Armstrong House Museum.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to look to fulfill my holiday gift list with his music and items from that great gift shop. But I'm just so impressed with the museum and all that you are doing. And unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank both of you, Jay Hershenson, Senior Vice President of Queens College, Chair of the Board of the Louis Armstrong Museum, and Riccardi, the Chief Archivist at the Louis Armstrong Museum and a Grammy Award winner. I want to thank both of you for joining us today. Encourage all of our viewers and readers to go online to the website and to visit the museum and check out Lucille's kitchen and the feminist that she was. This has been such an informative discussion. And again, I want to thank you both for joining us, and to our viewers and listeners for tuning in to Rise Up with Rebecca on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Thank you.